On today's menu at the Glow Diner, if you are not prioritizing your sleep right now, you are missing out on a whole other version of yourself that is thriving. So if you spend the entire day not letting your brain be bored, not letting your brain do its thing, and the only time it's able to do this is when you're trying to fall asleep, well, no shakes that it's just going to be thinking about everything and anything. Glow regulars, and if you're new here, welcome to the Glow Diner. My name is Virginia. I'll be your host, waitress, and cook for this episode, and today we are talking about sleep, more specifically the nightcap. So this episode is going to be split into two parts, and today we're going to focus on our nighttime routine, and next time we'll be focusing on the morning, because both are just as important to get you a good night's sleep and all the benefits that come from it. Today's episode is a combo episode, which that means that all of the information, tips, and advice are backed up by science. So if you're curious to learn more about the ingredients or the basic and the recipes or the actual science behind what I'm talking about today, all of the links to the references will be down in the show notes. You are more than welcome to go ahead and do some more reading on the subject. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to give you a little bit of a background story when it comes to my personal relationship with sleep. So from a really young age, I used to stay up so late because the time where I was actually supposed to be in bed was the only time that I felt like I could do what I truly wanted without feeling guilty. So I grew up in a household where it felt like I always needed to be doing something. I always needed to be productive. So I always needed to be doing like homework or cleaning or anything. So when I was expected to be sleeping was kind of the only time that nobody was checking up on what I was doing. And that's when I would end up like being on my iPod and playing little games, or even on my DS. So I used to like hide under the covers and play games or even read a book. Like I was such a nerd. I used to read books so incredibly fast. But all of this to say that I would not fall asleep until my body was literally fighting for me to fall asleep because I wanted to do everything but sleeping. And I've kind of got into this habit where I felt like I could really only go to sleep whenever my body was forcing me to fall asleep, which was really unhealthy. But fast forward a few years later, during the pandemic, I was working night shifts. So that also completely wrecked my sleep. If you've ever been a shift worker, you know how hard it is on the body to completely flip everything over and work during the night, sleep during the day, which was absolutely impossible for me. Like I would only sleep a few hours, and that was if I was lucky. So I'd go to work super tired in the dark. Not a great time. Then as I got a little older and I started working out and really prioritizing the gym, it made sense to me at that point to start waking up earlier so I could actually work out and make the time for the gym. But I wouldn't really change anything about my nighttime habits. I would still go to bed really late, but then get up super early so I could make it to the gym. And I just kind of assumed that this was how tired I was supposed to feel. I mean, when you're in college or just like as an adult in general, I think everybody around you is always complaining that they're tired. So you kind of assume that feeling tired is the normal and you push through and just make it through your day tired until you can go back to bed that same night. And oh my gosh, there was also a few months period when I was in college that I had upstairs neighbors, and this was also kind of in like the midst of the pandemic. The person that was in the room right above mine was working night shifts from home, and he was on the phone like literally the whole entire night with his desk chair rolling, him talking, and it was just the worst. I ended up being diagnosed with like chronic fatigue from that because I didn't sleep more than 3 hours a night for the longest time. So once I finally moved out of that apartment and I started sleeping a little better, I was like, this is great. This is how it's supposed to be. You know, I feel tired during the day, but I'm sleeping a lot more than I was when Sir upstairs was working from home. So I'm doing great right now. Now this is a very long story short, but I had a scare with my birth control and had some health issues surrounding that. I'm not going to talk about that today because it's such a long story, and I want to say that I'm still a very strong advocate for birth control, but it's just not something that was going to work for me. So I got an Oura ring so that I could sync it with natural cycles and get my temperature every day and still be able to follow my cycle. So kind of like as a birth control. And this is in no way, shape, or form sponsored by Natural Cycles or Oura. I honestly wish it was. I do love my Oura, but I just want to disclaim that you do not need any sort of really expensive wearables to track your sleep. Having access to that data was just kind of the wake-up call for me. So when I started wearing my Oura, I realized that I was really not getting enough sleep. I would look at my sleep stats and I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. We need to fix this. And I started really focusing on my sleep and actually getting enough sleep. And let me tell you, again, you don't need an actual very fancy, expensive wearable for this. For me, it was just kind of like the wake-up call of I need to change these habits and make it so much better. And it did, in fact, really change a lot of things for me. The amount of things that I was able to get done in a very few number of hours in my day when I would get a full good night of sleep was actually mind-blowing to me. I was able to focus so much better, be so much more productive. Like, just my brain felt like it was working in ways that I had never had it work before. Like, for example, like whenever I would be getting like 5 or 6 hours of sleep, it would take me like a whole day to like work on a project because I couldn't focus, I couldn't get it done. I just felt like everything was like trying to get me to like, I don't know, I couldn't focus at all. And then when I would actually get a full night of sleep, I would be able to just sit down and finish that project in one go, which was absolutely insane to me at the time because it was something I had never ever experienced. And not just that, because before I wasn't like sleeping as well, I was eating really well, I was working out, I was still doing really well in my classes, like I was still managing, like I was still doing really great. So I just assumed that, you know, I was getting enough sleep and that was that. Like that's how good I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. And then when I actually started getting really good sleep, it was like I like unlocked a whole other version of myself that was actually able to do so much more. And the gains that I got from actually sleeping well, it is no joke when people say that muscles grow in your sleep, because my booty got fat real fast once I started actually sleeping well. Okay? So all I'm going to say now, and I am going to be repeating this a few more times in this episode to make sure it sticks, is that if you are not prioritizing your sleep right now, you are missing out on a whole other version of yourself that is thriving. And I've heard it before. Like, I've had people say to me, like, how do you even make the time to sleep? Like, how do you even, like, get the time to get 8 hours of sleep in a night? Like, I know I can't. Honestly, the fact that I was able to get so many more things done when I got good sleep is the reason now I'm able to have that extra time to have good sleep. Because like I said, something that would usually take me a full day on a good night's sleep only takes me about 3 hours. So really, I'm actually gaining time by spending more time sleeping, you know? And don't worry, I got a little too inspired back there and had to keep talking. I know this is a combo episode, so here are some recipes for you to look back into to let you know that what I'm saying right now is not bullshakes. So like I said earlier, muscle growth happens during sleep, and there's a 2000 study showing that sleep is directly linked to hormonal regulation, and growth hormones peak during deep sleep. Not just that, also sleep deprivation was directly linked to worse body composition. So there's a study from 2010 showing that sleep restriction led to more fat retention and muscle loss, even in a caloric deficit, which is crazy. And finally, I was talking about how my focus was so much better. There is a 2017 study showing that cognitive performance and focus is increased with sleep. And I think one of the issues is that we treat bad sleep like it's just a minor inconvenience, but physiologically it's closer to showing up impaired. So 17 to 19 hours without sleep show the same cognitive impairment similar to alcohol, which is crazy. If you don't sleep for 17 to 19 hours, you start feeling drunk. So I don't know if you can tell just yet, but I'm extremely passionate about sleep. I take my sleep routine so incredibly seriously. Anybody close to me will tell you that this is absolutely true. It is one of the things that I prioritize the most because everything else that I do, eating well, going to the gym, working really hard, studying, all of this, I swear I can do a million times better. This is not science. This is just me saying a fun number. I can do it so much better if I'm actually well rested and I sleep well. So I'm very excited about this episode again, in case you couldn't tell. So let's jump right into it. Now, I'm about to tell you all of my secrets and all the ways in which you can make your night routine the perfect foundation for incredible sleep. A lot of the things that I have learned about sleep come from psychologist and renowned sleep expert Dr. Lindsay Browning. I really love her work and everything that she shares about sleep. And one of the most important things that she shares is that your sleep routine is very behavioral and cognitive. So at the end of the day, you can have the fanciest pillow, you can have the fanciest mattress, blankets, eye mask, earplugs, everything. You can spend hundreds of dollars on sleep. But the true solution to sleep comes completely from behavioral and cognitive habits, which is what we're going to get through today. I am crazy about my sleep routine, okay? When I tell you my sleep routine, I want to say starts an hour to an hour and a half before I even actually have my head on a pillow. My goal, and this is something that Dr. Browning shares, my goal is not to make my brain tired, but it's to let it know that now is the time for me to wind down and go to sleep. And there are quite a few things that I do for that. So first of all, I have a low stimulation window, which means that 30 to 60 minutes before bed, I reduce blue light. So no more screens. I try not to be on my phone at all. I try not to be on a computer. Any screens, I try to stay away from for about 30 to 60 minutes before bed, because there is a 2015 study that shows that screens delay melatonin production. I am not a big coffee drinker, but it's also important to say that caffeine, even 6 hours before bed, can disrupt your sleep. So avoiding that 4 p.m. iced coffee might actually be something you want to try. Something else is, I think we hear it a lot, the famous midnight snack, and try not to eat too close to bedtime. So eating before bed is not automatically bad, but what, when, and how much you eat does actually matter. So for example, ideally you want to finish bigger meals 2 to 3 hours before bed because digestion can interfere with sleep. And I remember hearing about this a while back. I was told that your body can really only digest fully or sleep fully at a time. It can't do both perfectly at the same time. So it's going to do both of them not as great. And then lying down can lead to more reflux, discomfort. So you're trying to fall asleep, your body's trying to digest, your brain is trying to rest. Nothing is working with one another. So again, there is a 2016 study that shows that meal timing affects sleep architecture a lot. But that doesn't mean that you should go to bed starving, because obviously hunger does increase alertness, so it's going to lead to you waking up more during the night as your blood sugar drops. So let's try to figure out what is our best before bed snack. So close to going to bed, you want to avoid high fat, heavy meals, you want to avoid spicy food, and you want to avoid large portions of food. The why is because those are the things that are going to slow your digestions and are going to lead to you waking up more times during the night. Instead, if you're feeling hungry and you feel like that's going to stop you from being able to sleep properly, you want to focus on a small snack that's more carbs and proteins. For example, you could have yogurt and a banana. While we're on the topic of food, I also want to quickly mention alcohol. So alcohol can make you fall asleep faster, but it absolutely wrecks your sleep quality. There's a 2019 study that shows that it fragments your REM sleep, which means that you never actually get to that point in your sleep cycle where your body is actually resting and doing what it needs to do while you're sleeping. Now, when it comes to what time you should be going to bed, what time you should be waking up, it varies a lot between different people. The good average is usually 7 to 9 hours. So it's kind of about, trialing how many hours works best for you. I know for me, like I was saying, I was able to get that sleep data from Aura, but I think it also comes down to just how you're feeling. So that's kind of a trial and error. But what's important to remember is that consistency is so much better than perfection. So if you're able to go to bed and wake up around the same time every single day, you're going to get that circadian rhythm alignment, which will then improve sleep quality as shown in a 2013 study. Now, I'm going to share with you everything that I do during that 1 hour / 1 hour and a half little sleep routine that I have. Rituals are the best psychological cueing that you can have to reduce that arousal if you're able to associate them with calm. So for example, like if every single night you follow that same routine right before you go to bed and you do it consistently, the minute you start that routine and go through it, I swear you're going to start feeling more tired, more relaxed, and more calm. So that when you actually get to the time that you go to bed, your brain just knows that now is the time to sleep. The little rituals that I do before sleep don't necessarily have perfect evidence that these are things that work to make you tired or make you fall asleep faster. It really comes down to the idea that you have this routine and that you're cueing yourself into feeling ready for bed. So I'm going to share them with you, but take them with a grain of salt. That's what works for me. If you have different rituals that work for you, I would love to hear about them. But one of the very first things that I do every night is I turn all the lights to red lights. This kind of signals my brain that it's time to relax. It feels a lot more calm than the big lights. Well, first of all, this is an anti-big lights household. Okay, let's just get this straight. But when night comes around, it is usually the red lights that are on. Something else that I do, I know they have a bunch of these like sleep spray that you can spray on your pillow. I like to have a little roll-on essential oil. Mine, I believe, is like lavender and probably some other fancy things like this. But as soon as I smell it, it's like my brain just knows right away that it's sleep time. And then something else that I like to do is have one of those little sleepy teas. Again, not necessarily very like science backed, but for me, like when I taste it, I know that it's time for bed. So I'm kind of simulating all of my senses in a way that tells my brain that it's time for bed. So my sight, I'm seeing all of these like red lights. It's much more calm. Taste, I'm tasting my tea that I only ever have before I go to bed. And then sense, I have that essential oil there that I like. And the best way that I can find to explain to you guys how well that works for me is to tell you about this little story. So I am somebody that I have never been able to sleep on the train, in a car, on a plane, name it, never. I flew to Thailand when I was 19 years old and I was on a 13-hour flight. And when I tell you my eyes did not close for any longer than a blink, I was never able to fall asleep. But almost 2 years ago now, I flew to London to go see Taylor Swift with my best friend. And it was a very last minute spare of the moment thing. I was going to be in London for, I believe, 4 days. I was flying on a red eye and then coming back again on a red eye, and I was working the day shift the next day. So I knew that I needed to sleep on these flights, like absolutely. It was a need. There was no discussion of me staying awake because I would have been the worst people you have ever met. I am like a toddler. I think that's why I'm also so passionate about sleep. I'm like a toddler, and if I don't get enough sleep, I will throw a tantrum and be absolutely insufferable to everybody around me. So all of that to say, I needed to sleep on that flight. So what I did is I brought a bag of my sleepy tea. I brought my little essential oil, and I turned my phone. I know you can do like a color filter on your phone so that it becomes a red screen. So I did that. I had my tea. I had my little essential oil scent. And for the first time ever in my entire life, I was able to sleep on a flight. And I'm not saying I got the best night of sleep. I did not sleep for the whole flight, but I slept long enough that my aura recorded it as a sleep. And that's a huge win for me because, like I said, I've never been able to sleep on a moving anything ever in my life. And then it worked. So it really just goes to show that rituals and having those little habits that really cue your brain into knowing that now is the time to sleep can truly help. And you're probably sitting there wondering why my routine is an hour and a half. I also count into that like my scalp care routine, my skincare routine, my dental hygiene, and this is no judgment to people who do it differently because I know some people shower in the morning, some people shower at night. I genuinely I need to shower at night. Like I'm moving around, running everywhere during the day. I use public transport. Like I need to shower at night. So showering is also part of that hour and a half routine and all that. But it really comes down to what works for you and what makes you feel the most comfortable and what makes you feel the most calm. Like I know for me, a hot shower with some eucalyptus is like a spa treatment and it makes me feel so much more rested. And then I put on my body lotion and everything. It's a whole ritual, because that's really what you want. It's like a ritual that makes you feel relaxed and that is recognizable for your brain to be like, okay, it is time to relax, it's time to rest, it's time for bed. And this is something that, again, Dr. Browning talks about a lot. She talks about how, yeah, earplugs can block out sound and wearing a eye mask can block out light. But at the end of the day, you can be wearing earplugs, you can be wearing a mask. If you're in a state where your body is anxious, you will not be able to sleep. And even if you're using supplements, melatonin, for example, even that might not help. And one of the examples that she was giving in a podcast that I was listening to, she was saying if somebody just randomly, a stranger, shows up in your room, it doesn't matter how much melatonin you've had, how much sleepy pills you've had, your sleepy tea, anything that you've been doing to try to get yourself to fall asleep, you will be so alert that you will be more awake than anything. And that really goes to show how anxiety and just that fight or flight response will keep you awake no matter what you do to try to get yourself to feel sleepy. And as a 2010 study shows, insomnia is directly linked to an overactive brain. And something that's interesting to think about is, I talked about this a little bit in the other episode that I did about screen time and phone addiction. And we don't really let ourselves be bored during the day anymore because the minute we have to wait in line, we're grabbing our phone and we're scrolling social media. Even when we're watching a movie, sometimes the movie gets boring enough that you decide to grab your phone and scroll. So we're always being stimulated by something. And whenever you go to sleep and actually lay down in bed and have absolutely nothing to stimulate you is the one time that your brain is like, oh, this is my time to shine. This is my time to think about everything that I wasn't able to think about all day because I was getting distracted by everything else. So if you spend the entire day not letting your brain be bored, not letting your brain do its thing, and the only time it's able to do this is when you're trying to fall asleep, well, no shakes that it's just going to be thinking about everything and anything. So obviously we can be working towards trying to have those bored moments in a day, trying to have a few minutes, not right before you go to sleep, but throughout the day where you're just kind of doing nothing and letting your brain do its thing. That can definitely help. But I also want to give you solutions for when you really just cannot sleep. You're laying in bed, your brain is running, and there's absolutely nothing you can do other than let it do its thing. So here are 4 tips to get you to fall asleep if your brain just won't shut up. And now let's be very clear that these are not tricks to make you fall asleep. They're just distractions so that sleep can actually happen. So it's to get you to stop thinking about the things that make you really anxious so that your brain can actually relax and be in a state that it can fall asleep. So tip number 1 is cognitive shuffling from Beaudoin 2016. The idea behind this is that you want to have a bunch of random non-emotional thoughts to help sleep onset. So what Dr. Browning was saying is, let's say you think of a word. So I don't know, water. I'm looking at my water bottle in front of me and I'm thinking of the word water. I want you to try and find as many words as you can starting with the letter W, because water starts with W, you know? So for example, I don't even know. Wall, white, wheel, woman. There are so many other words that start with the letter W, but for example, that's where my brain decided to stop. But all this to say, you think of an object and then you take the first letter and then you think of as many words as you can with the same first letter. And if you can't think of any anymore, then you just pick another random object and then you try to find more words that start with that same letter. The idea behind it is that it's trying to get you to think about things that are not linked to anything else, and that cannot necessarily get you to think about other random things around work. Oh my god, one of my W words should have been work. No, I said it in the last episode that I had been dreaming about work. I am happy to report that this has stopped. I'm knocking on wood. Yeah. Anyway, tip number 2 is visual imagery. I don't know if I said that word right. This is a word that's really hard for me. But anyway, this is from a 2002 study, and it can really be anything. Like, it's about this idea of like thinking that you're on a beach and trying to think of as many details as you can about the beach. So how does the sand feel? How does the heat feel? Everything, all of that. Kind of trying to get yourself away from just laying in your bed and trying to fall asleep. And it can be anything. Like, it doesn't have to be somewhere real. You can imagine that you're like at Hogwarts or something. I was gonna say the Hunger Games. Don't. Maybe not that one. Number 3 is just to let go of the pressure. So there is a 1979 study that is still very interesting. Tip number 3 is to essentially stop obsessing over how much you're not sleeping. So one thing that, again, Dr. Browning was mentioning is that she tells everybody to completely avoid looking at the time, because you'll be laying in bed trying to fall asleep and then feel like you've been laying there for a really long time. You look at a time, you realize that it's already been an hour, and oh my gosh, I haven't been sleeping for an hour. I have to be up in that many amount of hours, so I'm not going to get enough hours of sleep. And then you start spiraling and being anxious about this now. So you're trying to fall asleep, and now you're being anxious about actually falling asleep. That's happened to me so many times before, I can't even tell you. So the best thing you can do is literally just let go of it. Completely ignore whatever time it is, whatever time you think it is. Stop putting pressure on falling asleep. And yeah. The last tip is based on stimulus control therapy. And it's essentially to get out of bed if you can sleep. So if you're awake for 20, 30 minutes, get up, do some like low light activity, like walk around, and then just come back to bed whenever you feel sleepy. You want to avoid just like getting up and then trying to sleep on the couch instead. Like, that's just, you still want to have your brain understand that your bed is for sleep. But sometimes it's better to just kind of like get out of the situation and try to think about something else than just trying to fall asleep, and then actually go back to bed when your body is ready. And this is all under the concept of sleep efficiency. So this is the concept that shows that the time you're asleep does not equal the time that you're in bed. And that was something that I think was my biggest mistake, is I would kind of assume that if I was in bed for 8 hours, then I was sleeping for 8 hours, but I would end up like tossing and turning for way longer, and then I wouldn't get as much sleep. And I would think that, it didn't make sense, because I was like, well, how does more time in bed does not equal more rest? It can actually just mean worse sleep. So So if you learned something from all of these tips, is that the more you chase sleep, the faster it runs. So the more you're obsessing about actually falling asleep, when you are in that headspace of like, oh my God, I can't fall asleep. I can't fall asleep. There's too many things going on. There's too many noises going on. There's too much light. Anything, the best thing you can do is to completely ignore the fact that you're trying so hard to fall asleep and try to get your brain to think of other things so that sleep can actually happen. So you can't just force sleep. Like, sleep is not like a workout. You don't get better results by just trying harder. In fact, trying harder is probably what's keeping you awake because you're so focused on it. So stop trying to knock yourself out and start setting the table for sleep instead. Anyway, this is probably the fastest I have ever recorded an episode because of how much research I've already done on sleep and how incredibly passionate I am about this, in case you couldn't tell. But this will be all for part number 1. In part 2, we're going to be talking about morning, because believe me, your morning routine is just as important as your nighttime routine when it comes to getting good sleep, because here's a little taste of next episode for you. Your wake up time actually affects your sleep a lot more than your falling asleep time. So I'll leave you with that. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow, subscribe, rate, and review whatever the podcast platform that you're listening to the podcast on lets you do, to make sure that you're not missing the next episode on sleep. I really hope that today's special hit the spot, and as always, this one's on me. Bye!